Welcome everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join us today for the State of Commerce Experience B2C in the UK. My name is Stacey Trimble-Richard and I'm the Head of Global Marketing here at Bloomreach. I've been in the e-commerce and digital space for many years, and 2020 has certainly brought changes to the industry that have had a profound impact on the way we work, we live and do business. COVID has changed the way retailers and brands think about driving important business decisions, and it's critical we understand how these decisions are being accelerated, reprioritized, and what's required for continuous investment. We're right in the middle of a second lockdown in the UK, and as the holiday shopping has kicked off much earlier this year, with some shoppers starting their spending mid-October, a stretched out holiday season is certainly upon us. With 50% of customers shopping online for products they've never bought before, and 66% of shoppers have said that their purchasing behaviours have changed for good, e-commerce and the digital experience continue to be at the forefront. So to dive into this and other revealing data, we've got some great research to take you through during the next hour. It is my pleasure to introduce our speakers for today. First, we have Joe Sisman from Forrester. He is a senior analyst and is going to be taking us through the great research that Forrester has done with Bloomreach. Joe helps e-business professionals improve and optimize e-commerce technology and strategies. Following Joe, we're going to hear from Hugh Fletcher, Head of Thought Leadership EMEA at Wunderman Thompson Commerce. His work focuses on helping clients to transact more digitally through strategic consultancy, covering digital business transformation, the future of e-commerce and conversion. Then later in the session, Predrag Spesajevic from Bosch Power Tools will be joining Hugh and Joe in a panel discussion. Predrag is the technical product owner of the global B2C platform at Bosch and is responsible for driving further platform developments and migrating different brand websites onto the platform, resulting in increased user experiences and cost reductions. So with the introductions now complete, allow me to turn it over to our speakers. Joe, can you please kick us off?
Thanks, Stacey. And thanks everyone for taking time today to hear about the State of Commerce Experience in the UK. There we go. I want to start by taking us back to what feels like 10 years ago, to January 2020, when we were socializing with friends and colleagues, when consumers were shopping in malls. Back in January, we expected another consistent 15% increase in holiday digital sales. But we've got different expectations now because of COVID. Retailers are preparing themselves for an extended season, and Forrester has some key points to help you plan and execute effectively. Overall, we see the brands and retailers this year have to manage an earlier than usual start. So John Lewis launched its Christmas shop in late August. And in the US, Target, Walmart, and others are offering competing early specials. They also have to manage mixed economic indicators that are shaping consumer shopping decisions. So consumer savings rates are up over last year, but so is unemployment. And that mix of improving but still sobering indicators suggests that consumers will be looking for special values this year. And they have to manage store cleanliness and convenience. COVID-wary shoppers could push online sales higher, but stores are still important. As of May, nearly half of UK online adults said they'd only visit stores if they were thoroughly cleaned nightly and that require everyone to wear masks. My colleague Emily Pfeiffer published some research recently on how retailers can use order status alerts to delight consumers. She found that retailers have an opportunity to win over consumers by first prioritizing expectations management. So by even before consumers place their order, give them an estimated delivery date, and then keep them up to date if there's any delays. And also by celebrating their new purchase. So holidays are celebratory. So retailers should add to that by boosting their customers' excitement as the delivery date approaches, and adding value to the purchase. And you do that by personalizing the messaging, or suggesting complementary products, or offering relevant materials like assembly instructions for furniture. And these are things that retailers and brands can do to boost the overall digital commerce experience. So today, with the holiday season right around the corner, we want to talk about the findings of a survey that Forrester conducted with Bloomreach. In short, we found that COVID-19 really put e-commerce in the spotlight. And one of the things that we know is when a consumer is exposed to an improved digital experience, their expectations for all experiences are reset to a new and higher level. So what that means is consumers are not looking at you in a silo versus just your competitors, but every time they have a great experience, whether it's on Netflix or Facebook or Google or Amazon or anywhere else, that's resetting the bar for every competitor in the space. It's important to understand that and see that as a key to your success. One of the things that we know about the pandemic is businesses expect the pandemic to drive growth. We asked 50 global decision makers, how has COVID-19 affected your business? We're seeing 46% of them expecting growth. Now, 6% say they're seeing unprecedented growth, and 40% of them say they continue to grow because of a spike in online sales. So amongst the doom and gloom, 46% of businesses see this pandemic as driving growth. The pandemic has changed shopping behaviors. Consumers are buying more. They're buying categories online that they've never bought before, and they're turning to online as a way to overcome these pandemic challenges. So what were these consumers' responses to the pandemic? Well, they turned to buying online. 50% of consumers are shopping online for products they never bought online before. And when we look at the top 3 categories consumers are buying online for the first time, it's groceries, it's household products, and it's kids' toys. We know the pandemic is going to establish a new normal, and the habits that are set now are going to continue once the pandemic resolves. So it's now that e-commerce businesses need to step up and rise to these expectations. Not only are they buying for the first time online, they're also buying more. 70% of consumers are purchasing more than usual, and the top 3 categories are grocery, household products, and medicine, pharmacy, prescriptions, the necessities. So again, consumers are buying more items online and they're shopping they are buying more things online, and they're also shopping for things that they've never bought online before. And that's because they're scared to go to stores. 92% of survey respondents say the pandemic has changed their shopping behaviors. They avoid physical stores because of risk of exposure. They're putting discretionary shopping on hold, and they're looking at buying the essentials online. This activity creates new opportunities for companies. When we ask global decision makers, which of the following have you experienced in your business due to the current COVID-19 situation, we see a few things. Certainly, businesses are grappling with shortage of employees. That's something universal. But we also saw increased volume of search, increased volume of traffic, increased volume of orders, increased reliance on marketplaces, and increased importance of their digital channels. So that's what online businesses are seeing. But from a consumer's perspective, they're searching for more things. They're moving online, and they're buying more. So why invest in e-commerce now? Is it time to be conservative and hope that your customers cut you some slack? Well, our advice is to invest in e-commerce now, and here's why. Because 42% of consumers say they would pay more for a better shopping experience. So you should invest in commerce experiences now because your customers value it, and they'll pay more for a better experience. The data we collected showed a significant number of businesses really need to get back to basics and get those basics right. So let's talk a little bit more about that. From the data, we know that consumers are frustrated with your experience. 67% of UK consumers report experience friction. These range from out-of-stock items to questions that don't get answered. And only 13% say that their most recent online experience was completely personalized to them. So there's two things here that we see. One is you're not meeting their expectations, and two, you're not offering them a personalized experience. So let's dive deeper into that. Consumers feel frustrated throughout their journey. There's a lot of data on this slide, so let me walk you through it. We asked them, thinking about your online purchases in the last 3 months, what issues have you experienced in the following phases of your purchase journey? And then we segmented the data across journey stages. First is search and nav, second is product information and features, third is supporting content, and then fourth is purchase and support. Under the first one, search and navigation, 34% said, I can't filter my search results. 26% said the website was difficult to navigate. And 25% said, I'm getting inaccurate search results. Again, folks, these are the basics. And these are all things right at the beginning of a journey. And with this friction this is causing traffic, which in many cases you paid for, to abandon. So let's look one step deeper to product information and features. 36% said missing imagery, 32% said confusing or missing product information, and 26% said confusing or missing delivery information. Again, table stakes, must-haves. Consumers need product information. How do you buy a product if you can't see it? Now on to supporting content. 32% said lack of customer reviews and ratings. 20% said lack of professional reviews or ratings. And 17% said the generic content wasn't relevant. Reviews boost purchase confidence, and without them, you just have to work harder elsewhere to build that purchase confidence. Now, finally, on to purchase and support category. 39% said slower, expensive delivery. 28% said lack of tracking capabilities, and 20% said they didn't take my preferred means of payment. This data paints a pretty bad picture of the state of what should be basics of digital commerce. The data also revealed that consumers aren't satisfied with their research experience. When we ask, on average, how satisfied are you with your research experience on each of these channels? Online marketplaces is leading here in terms of satisfaction. Around a third of consumers are fully satisfied with a brand's mobile app. Then a bit below a third of consumers are fully satisfied with a reseller's website. So even here, if we look at the online marketplaces, just over a third of consumers are fully satisfied. It's really important, again, get the basics right, because friction is front of mind with consumers. Nor are they satisfied with their purchase experience. We asked, on average, how satisfied are you with your purchase experience on each of these channels? Marketplaces were leading with 52% of consumers saying they were fully satisfied, followed by a reseller's website at 40% and brand's website at 37%. And then you see the rest drop off. The data is telling us there's a real opportunity for you to level up your commerce experience from search and nav all the way through to purchase and post-sale. It was also clear that commerce experiences lack personalization. We asked, thinking about your most recent online experience with the brand, how personalized do you feel the experience was? Only 13% said it was completely personalized. 26%, on the other hand, said it was somewhat personalized. Now, we've all experienced a somewhat personalized commerce experience. Maybe they address you by name, or they say good morning when it's morning in your time zone. An experience that's only somewhat personalized isn't enough. Companies need to lean into personalization and create a connection with consumers to give them relevancy and value. In a world where every time a user is exposed to a great digital experience, their expectations for all digital experience rises, the must-haves are crucial. So we just talked about the friction. Now let's focus on what those must-haves are for consumers. So first up, search. We asked UK consumers, how important are these activities for finding products or services you plan to purchase? If you look at the first one, we see searching on an online search engine. Then in the gray area, it's searching on a brand or wholesaler's website, searching for a product on a marketplace, and reading a brand's product content or how-tos. So searching online is a must-have for consumers, and most e-commerce sites do that in a frustrating way. Consumer demands these must-haves. Consumers demand these must-haves when they decide whether to shop on a site. We asked UK consumers, how important are the following search and navigation features when deciding to shop a site? Top 3 answers: easy navigation, search results that show me what I'm looking for, and refining search results by price, brand, style, or any other attribute. So consumers are demanding the basics when they decide whether to shop your site. So you need to get these basics rock solid before you move on to other priorities on your list. Consumers also want clarity in the product information. We asked, how important are the following product information and features when deciding to shop on a site? They said they want visible and simple pricing, a flexible return policy, and then product images. So flexible return policy, well, maybe they've gotten so used to poor product images that their solution to the inevitable purchase mistake is to be able to easily make a return. And the seemingly advanced stuff is at the bottom. So ask yourself, can you really put this advanced stuff to work for your shoppers if you haven't solved for the basics? Well, the answer is clear. Your shoppers consider the basics more important than the advanced stuff. The data was really clear here. There's a disconnect between what consumers want and what e-commerce sites are delivering today. Businesses aren't prioritizing what consumers want. We surveyed digital commerce decision makers in the UK. And when we asked which of the following search and navigation capabilities are part of your e-commerce strategy, they told us, well, visual search was first, then personalized search, then the ability to refine search results. Easy navigation was low on the list. So this explains the data. The experience friction is at a point in the journey that isn't getting prioritized. You need to nail these must-haves. We asked UK decision makers, which of the following product information features are part of your e-commerce strategy? Product images are number 1. Virtual try-on is number 2, which frankly was low on the consumer's list. 44% have product availability information as part of their strategy, and less than a third have rich, detailed product information as part of their strategy. Why are these critical must-haves so low on the priority? Maybe they think they've got product information and availability nailed. But consumers we surveyed told us, no, you haven't figured it out, and you're not providing us with that rich information. And when you ignore it, we go somewhere else to buy. Bad experience has a very high cost for merchants. More than half of consumers are unlikely to purchase from the same merchant again if they had a bad experience. And of those, 60% are likely to tell others about that bad experience. So if you don't get these must-haves correct, you're likely to lose that consumer. And they're also going to tell other people that it was a really bad experience. What once was your business continuity is now your competitive differentiation. So let's look at channels, technology, and operations. We're going to share some important data and insights that you can take back to your business as you move forward, adapting to the pandemic. So pre-COVID, almost half of businesses plan to increase their budget for offline stores. We asked, do you plan to increase, decrease, or maintain your budget in the following areas in the next 12 months? 60% of B2C sites said, we're going to invest in offline store. 50% of B2B sites said, we're going to invest in our offline store. But what happened since has caused businesses to quickly shift spend from offline to online. We re-asked that question. Do you plan to increase, decrease, or maintain budget in the following areas in the next 12 months? 64% said, we're going to increase our investment online. 58% said, we're going to increase investment in the mobile app. And that's actually a 13% surge over the pre-COVID data. And 46% are going to increase their investment in marketplaces. And the top decreases? Offline channels. 20% are going to decrease their investment in offline stores. So let's look a little bit more at that shift from heavy investment in offline to heavy investment in online. So while investments are increasing, they're not necessarily aligned with the areas that matter most to consumers. On consumers' most valued capabilities under search and navigation, it was easy navigation, helpful search results, and advanced search capabilities. Over on the right-hand side of the slide, the pre-COVID data says businesses wanted to invest in connected products, digital tools for the sales force, AI capabilities, integration with social commerce platforms, and using third-party marketplaces. But since COVID, and this is the recontact that we did in the lower right, it's AI capabilities. Advanced search jumps up near the top because we want our customers to be able to find what they need faster. We're building out our direct-to-consumer model, and then ahead of our investment in using third-party marketplaces. Getting smart pays off. In fact, 100% of our survey respondents says they've seen the value in AI on product recommendations. 95% have seen increased average basket size due to better AI personalization, and 100% have seen the value of AI on their customer journey. So in closing, what are our key recommendations? Well, we found that digital commerce powers interactions beyond transactions. Customers need support along the entire digital journey, from inspiration pre-purchase to support post-purchase. Companies selling to consumers need to embrace this and move beyond just being a cart and checkout to becoming that inspiration and digital concierge for their customers. You need to nail commerce must-haves to drive new sales and loyalty. Consumers want to know if the item they want is in stock, and they want to see detailed product information about it. It's a digital commerce imperative for companies to deliver on these must-haves. And lastly, look to your partners to tailor and optimize your experiences. Look to search and content providers for embedded AI capabilities. Ensure those digital experience building blocks and interface with your other core digital commerce systems to surface content insights with AI. And help enable more effective shoppable moments in any channel. So again, I'm Joe Sisman. Now back to you, Stacey.
Thank you, Joe, for presenting those very interesting insights. Certainly some great food for thought there in terms of how much priorities have shifted since COVID and the need to absolutely rethink how to deliver digital commerce. Now, to dovetail into this, we're now going to hear from Hugh from Wunderman Thompson Commerce. As I mentioned earlier, Hugh will be presenting data taken from several research pieces as he highlights what is rather aptly described as the 10-week mega peak and what business and brands need to learn from this. I'm really looking forward to it, Hugh. So over to you.
Right, thanks very much, Tracy. So, Stacey, sorry. Right, today I'm going to be talking about the 10-week mega peak. So normally at this point of time, we'd be talking about Black Friday, getting prepped for that, talking about Black Friday period. But this year, we're very much talking about something different, which is this 10-week mega peak. So what I'm going to talk about today is data taken from 4 different pieces of research which we've run, something which we ran early in the year about Black Friday. Then we talk about future shopper, looking at how trends are changing for consumers across the board. Then in July, we ran some research into COVID and its effect on commerce. And we've recently just done some research into what we call the mega peak. So I think what's interesting to look at is what Black Friday was looking like at the beginning of this year. So actually, it was looking very positive. We were on for a massive bumper Black Friday period. Consumers were telling us that their spending was going to be 24% up. If we look at what had been spent on Amazon Prime Day in 2019, the average spend was about £182. And if we look at the average spend in 2019 on Black Friday, it was about £75. So we're on for a very strong Black Friday. But of course, as we all know, the world then changed, and it's pretty safe to say that 2020 has not been a particularly vintage year. So the consequence of this, of course, is that consumers were suddenly afraid of physical shopping. So we ran some research in July that indicated that 48% of consumers were afraid of going into stores. And in fact, 62% of consumers felt less positive about shopping in store. We ran that research in September, and those numbers had fallen slightly to 24%. We're still talking about almost a quarter of the population who are frightened about going into store. Now, I think actually that number was probably changing, but obviously, as we now know, we're in our second lockdown and there's some negativity and some worry about going into physical stores. So those numbers are probably around about the same. Now, what we saw over the course, and none of you will be particularly surprised at seeing this, is that during lockdown, we saw increase in online spend versus pre-COVID times. And we also asked consumers at that point to predict what their spending would be online in a world where COVID didn't exist. And what they told us is that while that would slightly decrease versus what happened during lockdown, that would still be higher than what it was pre-COVID. So in the UK, for instance, 51% of spend is going to be projected to be online in the future. In the US, 45%. And in general, consumers feeling more positive about online shopping than they were before. Now, the question we always get asked at that point is, well, how much of this is permanent versus temporary? And what our data is telling us is it looks like these changes are here to stay. So in the UK, 66% of consumers said that their shopping behavior had changed for good, while in the US, 63% said that was the case. And only 16% across both countries said that they would revert back to what their shopping habits were pre-COVID. Now, that's obviously been facilitated by increased comfort with technology. So 38% of consumers told us that they were now more comfortable with technology. And these are a couple of snaps that I got during lockdown, which really show that. So we have my son with his football team, his under-8s football team, communicating via Zoom. We have my mum, who's a total, technical Luddite, doing voice conferencing with my kids, two groups of people who prior to lockdown, just didn't really use that technology in the same way. And then this one picture is my daughter outside with her own laptop, Zooming one of her friends. Now, the only sad thing about this is that about 2 seconds later, she fell off that chair with the chair breaking. And if I'd been videoing this rather than taking a static picture, I probably would have got about 250 quid from You Been Framed. But hey, that's the way it goes. But nonetheless, everyone much more comfortable with technology. And of course, we have this added effect of Prime Day being delayed from July to October. Lots of reasons provided as to why that was. So Amazon focusing on delivering essentials to people. But what happened is what was previously a peak was then moved to further back in the year. So what does this all mean for peak trading? Well, Amazon's move back into October meant that this peak around Black Friday started significantly earlier. We know a previous trend is that retailers were starting their Black Friday offers much earlier last year anyway, but we've seen that trend increase. So we've seen Black Friday in October roll into very early, Prime Day in October roll into very early Black Friday deals. What we've also heard a lot in the news is fear about infrastructure being able to cope with all the orders and potentially, all those Christmas presents we've ordered for loved ones not actually arriving on time. So people pushing their spending earlier. And of course, there is a slightly desperate retail landscape when retailers are desperate to recover their 2020 and make sure they get as much spending as possible in order to make sure that they remain viable for the future. Now, of course, here in the lockdown, as we mentioned, here in the UK, as we mentioned, we're in lockdown 2.0, and that's closed all non-essential physical retailing stores over the Black Friday period. And that has, of course, ensured that even more is pushed online. So what's our intel telling us about all of this? Well, COVID will have its impact on our Black Friday period spending. So 16% of consumers said their spending would actually go up during Black Friday period compared to last year, whereas 38% of consumers said that their spending would go down. And we hear lots of conflicting data about what Black Friday will be like, what the economy is like. Our data is telling us that actually there will be a small contraction. We also have the fun and games of Brexit. So sometimes, I suppose to a degree, thankfully, we can forget about Brexit. So back in January, 25% of consumers said they were expecting to spend less during Black Friday as a consequence of Brexit. That number, that percentage actually decreased when we asked that in September, with 20% of consumers saying that Brexit would affect their Black Friday spending. What we do know is it's going to be an online event. So our estimates are that 67% of spending on Black Friday will be online. But as we keep on referencing, we are in lockdown 2.0. This will drive even more consumers online, with only those essential retailers being opening now. So this potentially is even a conservative estimate of how much Black Friday spending will be online. And who's going to win the Black Friday period? Well, it looks like it's going to be Amazon, with 65% of consumers saying their spending will be via Amazon. So a big dominance of Amazon during Black Friday, and that, as of course, has benefited from their Prime Day sale starting in October as well. And of course, as I keep on saying, lockdown 2.0 is only going to increase that, because, like we say, those non-essential retailers not open, driving more people towards Amazon and towards online purchasing. Now, what we know is that Amazon's position is very strong anyway from lockdown the first time round. So we looked at some numbers, and we looked at what's the performance of various different organizations meant for their perception, but also for the intention to purchase for those retailers in the future. And what that data told us was that there was sort of a 25% increase in positive perception for Amazon based on its performance during lockdown. So 34% of consumers said that their perception of Amazon had improved, while just 9% said that it had declined. And then we asked the consumers, well, okay, that's fine, but what does that mean in terms of spending? So 29% said that they would spend more with Amazon as a consequence of their performance during lockdown, and 9% said less. And we know across our data is that across these different areas, so inspiration, search, and purchase, Amazon is really doing a great job. And while many consumers and many people within the industry view Amazon as quite transactional, what we're starting to see is that even more consumers are going for inspiration, and certainly for their product search. Now, another thing that we've been looking at over a number of years is this trend towards more digital products and services. So what our data is telling us is that 17% of products and services that will be bought over this Black Friday period will be digital. 28% of what consumers normally purchase is either a digital product or a service. And 34% of online shoppers actually prefer purchases to be digital and instantly downloadable. So what we always encourage businesses to do is start to think about what their products or their services can be digitized. Hardware is also becoming a key battleground. And again, the news is that Amazon's owning this space. So 29% of consumers said they would be buying some form of Amazon hardware on Prime Day this year. 17% said they would be buying an Amazon Smart Assistant during Black Friday. 16% said they would be buying some form of Amazon hardware during the Black Friday period. And 15% of online shoppers actually currently use voice to make a purchase. So voice is becoming a much bigger interface. And we also want to know why consumers would go to D2C brands. And this is the data which came back, which told us why consumers would actually go to D2C rather than, I guess, defaulting to someone like a marketplace. Now, I like to keep things simple, so this is sort of the way I summarize it. At the top, of course, you have price, but then you have a load of elements around service, particularly around kind of delivery. Then you have elements around content, so making sure that content's right. And then elements around curation, personalization, and access. So I guess in summary, what do brands and businesses need to take away from what I've told, what I've gone through today? I think what we can be almost certain about is that consumers have changed for good, and businesses need to make sure that they change their offering too. We know that service-led brands like Amazon are winning. The question is, how service-orientated is your business? We see more and more service-led brands are those that are really being successful and being strong in the market. Black Friday is dead. Long live the 10-week mega peak. I think it's very unlikely we're going to go back to those few days of big peaks in November next year. I think we're going to see a prolonged period of discounting next year as well. Invest in a voice strategy. So new interfaces will become more important. And the first version of that, I suppose, is voice. It's very important to have a voice strategy in place. And of course, digitize your products and services with a higher percentage of products and services becoming digital, and with more consumers asking for digital products and services, it's really important that those are offered. And with that, I'll hand back over to Stacey.
The advice that you shared regarding what D2C brands should be considering is invaluable. Given I read a stat in a Forrester report where we're seeing 45% of online adults interested or very interested in purchasing directly from a brand that makes a product rather than a retailer and a marketplace. Okay, so we're excited to move to the next section of today's session, where Predrag from Bosch will now join Hugh and Joe in a panel discussion. Bosch, of course, is the German multinational engineering and technology company whose heritage is in products such as household appliances, power tools, and industrial technologies. So welcome, Predrag.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Okay, thank you. So if I may start with a couple of questions for you. You've been involved in digital transformation activities at Bosch for the past 5 years, starting in the early days supporting the first e-commerce project. You're now the product owner for the global B2C digital experience platform. How can organisations like Bosch accelerate their journey towards their own D2C e-commerce channel?
Right. First, right at the beginning, there needs to be the question, what are the main digital capabilities that can create a competitive edge in e-commerce for one organization? Or simply put, organizations need to create a value proposition around their new channel in order to give enough reasons and benefits to their users to visit it and purchase. However, there are many organizations that do not know what their digital capabilities should be, and maybe they want to discover that by building some sort of a minimum viable product. So you may wonder, okay, why should I build a minimum viable product when there are so many best practices and examples out there of in the industry when it comes to the e-commerce implementations? Well, if one organization has never run an e-commerce business before, or a direct-to-consumer business before, to be more precise, then they must be having several assumptions, right? So I'm just going to name a few of them. The first one is that basically they're assuming that they know what is the target group that they should be targeting online, right? They assume that they know the preferences and behaviors of their users online, which are often different from the offline ones. Secondly, they're assuming that they know which channels, communication channels to use online. And they're also assuming that user journey with their product, right? Because the users have never purchased their product directly from them online. In third place, they're thinking they have the right people and skills in place to run direct-to-consumer business, that they have needed capabilities, whether they are in-house and outsourced, also with certain maturity levels. And finally, that they have needed applications and systems to do so, and that they know which data to collect or not to collect. So many things. We can say this is around 6 questions. In order to provide an answer to those questions, organization essentially needs to build an MVP and learn the harder way. So in order to do that in a very quick process, because now we're in the middle of COVID, you need to prevent this traditional IT discussions, what your main target architecture should look like in 10 years. So simply pick up any robust e-commerce solution that is robust enough to allow you to do customizations and integrations later, nevertheless flexible, so that it, for example, has a pre-built accelerator. So like a mini shop that you can launch in 2 months. Then secondly, you can partner and outsource for speed, right? You can find a partner who can take care of fulfillment, invoicing, and operations of the shop. Additionally, the shop does not need to be tightly integrated with the website that you want to have, but you can have a side-by-side integration on a subdomain. So the whole point that I'm trying to make over here is you can launch something that is as minimal as possible, as long as it allows you to deliver this extra value proposition to your users that can make you stand out next to these large marketplaces.
Okay, so it would seem you've from understanding your response there that you've needed to reprioritize your core digital capabilities and speed up your digital transformation. With the portion of sales that you're seeing moving to digital, and Bosch has two main target groups, the professional users and the hobby or DIY users. What is Bosch focusing on to foster the digital experience on its B2C platform and websites?
As you mentioned, Bosch Power Tools is trying to create sort of an ecosystem of both physical and digital products and services. And they're trying to do it around two main user groups. So professional users and the do-it-yourself, DIY users. When it comes to DIY users, we have the platform, bosch-diy.com, that is built on the Bloomreach Experience Manager and has multiple integrations with microservices and third-party applications. So on that platform, we're trying to facilitate this end-to-end customer journey. And if you recall Hugh's presentation some minutes ago, both him and Joe, they pointed out a user journey that can start with inspiration, move on to search, and then end up with a purchase. So let's use that as a reference in my case. When it comes to inspiration, the core of our platform is the editorial content. So over there, we have hundreds of projects, articles, or tutorials pages that are helping our users get inspired. They're also helping them get educated about our products. So essentially, we are using that opportunity to recommend the products, accessories, and attachments to our users based on the content that they're browsing at that moment. Moving on to the search phase, we have built a very robust on-site search with some modern functionalities such as autocomplete and auto-suggest that help the users narrow down the thing that they're searching for. And all these elements can work together very well only if there is the high quality product content that is perhaps complemented with some features such as frequently bought together, most popular products, similar products, and so on. And lastly, we have the purchase phase of the journey. And before we even started thinking about direct-to-consumer e-commerce channel, our own, we basically needed to fulfill some prerequisites or some must-haves, so to say. So we enabled our users to find the offline dealers where they can purchase the product, but also connected them to the online dealers where they can, right away from our product detail page, go to the online dealer and purchase the product that they're looking for. To wrap up the whole story, we kind of decided on the backend foundation, and now we're playing with the front end. We're creating the content, we're using different digital tools, such as for personalization and A/B testing, and all of that to provide a, let's say, tremendous digital experience to our users in some quick timelines.
Okay, so with the effort that Bosch is putting into differentiating within your website and digital platforms, it's definitely obvious that the recommendations that we heard earlier in the research on brands needing to make an impact is absolutely key. 28% of brands wanting to access or wanting access, to a full product range is one such demand. So what are you seeing from a global versus regional digital strategy? You know, can organizations empower their regional commerce experiences?
Most of the organizations that we're discussing in this context have already initiated their digital transformation journey, right? So they've most probably built some overarching digital strategy. That digital strategy gives a vision where an organization needs to be in future in order to succeed. It also probably lays out some strategic directions that say, what are the digital capabilities they need to build in order to differentiate? On the other hand, their regional, the local teams need to meet and satisfy local needs and behaviors from their local users on their locally relevant channels. And those very same local teams, they very often have different sets of digital capabilities, right? With different maturity levels. And subsequently, they're using different applications and systems and collecting different data. So imagine a very chaotic, heterogeneous IT landscape, which is often the case with some gigantic firms. So you can imagine that the local team in Brazil would need to communicate with Joao one-to-one using WhatsApp, and they would need to, and the local team in China would need to interact with Wang, for example, by integrating the chatbot inside of the WeChat. This is not what the overarching digital strategy states or defines. So to conclude, basically, we need to enable and empower our regions to derive their own regional digital strategy, or in the context of this webinar, to derive their own regional commerce strategy in order to meet their local needs, and sometimes where their local business models, which are very often different.
Okay, no, well, thanks, Predrag, for those great pieces of advice. Clearly defining what a great digital experience looks like for a retailer is no easy task, be it globally or regionally. Now, earlier in the session, we were talking about the Amazon effect and the threats that Amazon pose. If Amazon is so dominant, why bother with the direct-to-consumer presence? Hugh, can I throw this question to you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, a very good question. A question we get asked quite a lot. And obviously, our stats tell us that around about 35% of online spend in the UK is going to Amazon. So very dominant. But that also means that there's a lot that isn't going to Amazon. And we talk a lot about what we call a balanced e-commerce strategy. So thinking across 4 key channels. So obviously marketplaces, which includes Amazon, but D2C, retailers, and also increasingly social commerce. And of course, what D2C does, and I think Predrag summarizes very well, is gives businesses the opportunity to bring their brand and their content to life. It enables a direct relationship with consumers who are engaged with the brand. It also gives brands access to data as well, and I think that's really important in terms of defining the future strategy. So therefore, we would always say it's very important to definitely consider and have a direct consumer channel. It gives you that contact, it gives you that an ability to know what's going to happen in the future, and it means that you don't just hand over all your customers, all their data and all of their money to the likes of Amazon.
Okay. Thanks, Hugh. Now, Joe, your research covers new direct-to-consumer initiatives. What are your thoughts on that same question?
Yeah, so the research tells us that you need to be present where your consumers are. And 45% of online adults want to have a direct relationship with brands. So that means you need to deliver direct-to-consumer experiences while being present in all those other channels that your consumers use. So it's an and strategy, it's not an or strategy.
Okay, no, thanks, Joe. Now, the last question for today. If the consumer behaviour we have seen during the pandemic is permanent, how will this affect peaks and discounting in 2021? This time I'll start with you first, Joe.
Yeah, so in the months following the pandemic lockdowns in March, we experienced 10 years worth of e-commerce growth in just 3 months. Businesses are reporting that since then they've been handling Black Friday level peaks day after day. So we're seeing retailers starting the holiday season earlier this year. Meanwhile, we've got mixed economic indicators. So what these indicators are suggesting is that next year, by way of analogy, a rising tide will lift all boats, and that'll raise the baseline upon which the peaks are based.
Okay. And Hugh, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with Joe, and I guess what we've seen is those peaks that we were used to seeing have perhaps changed this year. As I sort of said in my presentation, this 10-week mega peak, which are now in the moving of Amazon Prime Day to the beginning of October, the fact that gave them almost first mover advantage, I think we'll definitely see a peak experience which is different but similar to 2020. I think probably Amazon will be unlikely to let go of its first mover advantage in early October for next year's Black Friday. So I imagine we'll see a very different experience. And of course, lots of retailers will be struggling next year. It will be tough to do trading, and therefore we'll see just bigger periods of discounting in order to make sure that they can reach their targets, keep themselves viable, and encourage shoppers to shop with them.
Okay, now I said the last question, but that's actually not correct. I've just seen a question that is in the chat, which this is actually for you, Joe. Slide 19 on customer frustration showed 32% named confusing, missing product info. How did this vary by sector? Example, grocery versus bigger ticket items.
Yeah, so I want to make sure that I'm very clear on this with regard to how we've segmented out the data. We didn't necessarily see major swings one category to the next. In fact, even outside of this research, in other research area, we see that even with bigger ticket items, there are problems. Problems do exist. Now, they're not necessarily across everyone, and some sellers are doing a better job of this than others. But one thing that we have seen is when you have some type of an economic incentive to get the product information right, like if you'll actually see this on some marketplaces where the search results are influenced by the completeness of the product data, then those problems tend to sort of go away because the ones who don't have it right sort of fall away. So that's sort of high level answer with regard to what we have seen in this data set, as well as other research regarding the difference in sector around quality of product data.
Okay, thank you.
If I may also add to this, I've seen some of the cases where a lot of the organizations have very well organized product data in terms of B2B business. But since this whole direct to consumer business became very new for them, also their product data was not in the quality that was required to feed their own channel.
Yeah, I'll add on to that. When we look at the sort of life cycle of where product data goes, like if you're a brand, you have control of your product data, you're able to control your digital shelf directly. As the value chain and the reseller chain starts to get longer, each of those companies is passing product data along, and the quality of that product data ultimately is a function of, one, whether they can receive and pass the data on, or if they're getting sparse data and then they're being forced to enrich it. So one of the other contributing factors to the quality across sectors is how long is that value chain versus how direct is it.
Okay. All right, well, I'm not seeing any other questions from our audience at this point in time. I'm just hanging on for another few seconds. Actually, no, we have now got a question for Hugh. With 35% of spend on Amazon, how does that differ by category? Have you published any research on this?
We have not published any research on how that splits. Our data does indicate that, and you're absolutely right. There are certain sectors where that number is higher, and we saw some data in Joe's research. Toys, entertainment, technology, Amazon very high. Other areas, things like fashion, we know that's an area they've been trying to get into a lot, not so strong. So we haven't specifically published anything on that, although I'm just trying to cast my mind back. I think in our Future Shopper research, we did do a little bit on different industries and where consumers shop from. So if anyone would like to see that, then feel free to contact me. I can send that to you. But we tend to look at a much broader view of what's happening in the market, and not so much into individual sectors. But yeah, absolutely, it's not consistent across all sectors. That's absolutely true to say.
And if there are any audience members who, after this session, think of a question, or either for the group or for any of our speakers here, please don't hesitate to send those through. We can always follow up separately. Okay, well, as it doesn't seem any further questions, I will say, though, thank you, gentlemen. It has been a rather informative panel discussion. And I also want to thank you for the effort that you certainly went into with that great results and point of view and observations for this session. I hoped everyone who is watching and listening today has found some sort of takeaway, one or two, and some useful, tactical ideas. You will be able to download the full State of Commerce Experience study at bloomreach.com/SOCE. And the other quick thing I just wanted to draw your attention to is Bloomreach are running a survey at the moment on the holiday shopping season, in light of COVID. Please take a moment and answer the questions, and you could be in the draw, pardon me, with a chance to win a £100 gift voucher. Anyway, lastly, thanks again for joining us today, and looking forward to seeing you next time.